We're in a place called the Dublin House, which is on the Upper West Side.
On my street, West 79th Street. It's a remnant of old New York and the Upper West Side, and there's very little of it left.
And by New York standards, it's actually quite an old pub. It dates back to 1921, in the height of Prohibition.
There you go.
When's the best time to open up an Irish pub? When there ain't much competition.
Just have to be a little discreet about it, but not that discreet in New York.
Prohibition went on all the way through the 20s and actually ended in the 1930s. And when it ended, the then owner celebrated by erecting a giant 12-foot neon sign, which still sits outside this pub today in the shape of a heart.
It's a beautiful thing. It was restored a few years ago, which was nice, keeping with the neighborhood. And they pour a lot of Guinness here. What I like about it, it's just a great hangout. It's not trying too hard to be anything. It's not trying to be some historic piece of New York history and lore. It's one of the last few regular pubs as far as in New York.
So John and I decided to sit down and talk about the year that we've had.
The year in review.
How do you want to kick this off, John?
It is a point to reflect. We should celebrate the wins and learn from the misses and near misses along the way. The year did start off well, where we met an amazing group of characters at the Smiths of Ranelagh, where we celebrated our award for the Best Society and Culture podcast from the Irish File Award. So this year got off to a good start.
And then it was all downhill after that.
Yeah.
What are you reflecting on now as we approach the winter solstice?
The year for the Irish Stew is taking a lot of different directions, which is good. It started with our road trip to Belfast last year, and most of those episodes rolled out this current year, in the beginning of the year. So we were still kind of savoring that experience of being in Belfast. It is a compact road trip. We were mostly on foot or occasionally in a taxi cab. And we had some great experiences wandering around that town and the people we talked to. I'll put one of those episodes as a kind of a highlight of mine. We talked about our second road trip as being off the beaten track, but for crack. I would rate our episode with Belfast Nights are Michael Stewart and the Belfast Tours Carolyn Wilson, the Mad Duo, held it at the cavernous, cacophonous Common Market. I would rate that very high in the crack scale for us.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That one was a real joy. And one of the more interesting things that came across our desk at the start of the year was from our friend Maeve McCullough, who runs the Capital Irish Film Festival. And she picked up the phone and called me and said, "How would you like to do an episode where we have Mary Robinson on it?"
Hard to pass that one up.
Yeah, needless to say, I didn't hum or haw about that. It's not every time you get that kind of a chance. And while there's been many presidents of Ireland, there's just a new one recently elected, I believe the 10th president of Ireland. Mary Robinson's probably the most important one in my view, because she represents a change from the old Ireland to the current Ireland. The first woman to hold the office.
Probably the best known internationally of any Irish high official. I can't imagine there was a better known one in my lifetime than Mary Robinson. Still a factor in international relationships.
Yep. And of course, if you just Google her, you will find iconic photos of her wearing her purple suit as she is sworn in, surrounded by a whole bunch of men in dark suits around her. And it's such an iconic image because it's a stepping away from the old, this kind of gray, dour Ireland to a more progressive, looking forward Ireland. And that's how the country, for the most part, has gone. It has its own struggles, but to me, that was just a fabulous opportunity.
That would be the first residency for the Irish Stew, the Solace in the Capital Irish Film Festival. Unfortunately, I let you off on your own on that experience because, as noted then, my older brother had died, and you kindly dedicated the series to the Irish King, as my older brother Dan was known. So I missed that one. I know you saw some great films. We still have a couple of episodes to roll out from that series, and we're going to go back, and I'm going to go with you this time to the Capital Irish Film Festival.
And just a shout out to Maeve McCullough of Capital Irish Film Festival. It's a great 4 days, and there's a lot of crack to be had. to visit that film festival. Actually, the weekend pass has just gone on sale, like literally a couple of days ago.
I have friends who went to it that weren't Irish at all. They had a great time and saw a bunch of films. It's really cool to immerse yourself. I didn't get to do it this time, but I look forward to it. But it is in the outskirts of Washington, D.C. Is it now the Trump Capital Irish Film Festival? Has it been?
I'm not gone there, John.
You're stay positive.
But yeah, it takes place actually in Silver Spring, which is just on the north side, in this beautiful theater. It's the most comfortable movie theater you'll ever sit in. And you'll see films at this that you're never going to see in commercial release. And it's a reminder just how extraordinary the creative talent is that's coming out now. You look at this and you're like, wow, I can't believe this stuff. So do yourself a favor, Google Solus Nua, and make sure you're tapped into that. And if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, give it your best consideration.
You can see one movie or a dozen. And you said something there that I think highlights the theme for us. Doesn't quite fit in.
Yep.
A lot of our stuff doesn't quite fit into the main media narrative. We talk to people who are well-known in their field, but maybe not well-known out of their field. We look for maybe some of the stories that hadn't been told, which is one of the main drivers behind our next road trip, and we're rolling those episodes out now. We still have quite a few, we have another 5 probably to go, our Off the Beaten Craic and the Hidden Heartlands road trip. But we were looking to go to what you call those drive-through counties, the places in the Irish Midlands that people zip through on their way from Dublin to the Cliffs of Moher or the Wild Atlantic Way. We did make our first stop there on the one place they might stop in the Hidden Heartlands, which is Sean's Bar.
Yeah, Sean's Bar, of course, is a famous spot. It operates under the title of essentially the world's oldest pub. And it points to wattle and daub as part of the structure, which is an old medieval technique for building a pub, or building buildings back then. And so it's a wonderful place to go, sink a couple of pints, and plenty of crack to be had there.
We had a great time in Athlone. We did some things in Athlone, but we also wisely used it as our base to explore the rest of the Hidden Heartland. So the rest is all we could fit in, because there were so many things we didn't get to do, and there were things that we just stumbled into that were great as well.
A peak point, and I'm always thinking in my stomach, was our meal with Time Restaurant. And our conversation with John Coffey, who's the chef/proprietor of Time Restaurant, wasn't just about the food. It wasn't just about the conversation, but you begin to understand a different way of living. And I remember asking John, hey, have you ever considered opening up more outlets? And his answer was, yeah, I've considered it, and I don't want to do it because I've essentially spread myself too thin, and it wouldn't be the same. And what's interesting about that for me is it's okay to say I have enough, that I am happy in what I am doing and it is satisfying. And that's an important message. You don't always have to be the biggest or the greatest, etc. And I will add, just recently in the Irish Times, he got this extraordinary glowing review. And I emailed him and said, hey, John, congratulations on the review. He said, yeah, I'm really happy about that. But nobody caught the reviewer when she was in here.
Yeah, that's how they're supposed to do it.
And that's an even better statement. And for my money, it's certainly the best meal I've had in the year.
Although we do report earlier, it happened the year before, but the episode rolled out early this year, was a great meal we had at the Waterman House.
Absolutely.
In Belfast. Niall McKenna's, a great place there. It's hard to say, like, the time is a standout, unique. It's almost hard to even remember what we'd had. It was so unusually presented and so different. Whereas Niall's restaurant it's like the best version of the thing you've ever had. You've had it before, but this is the best version you've ever had. One thing that kept coming to me through the Hidden Heartlands tour and many other spots in our Irish discussions, but particularly in the Hidden Heartlands, the sense of commitment to community. And we found that in so many places. They're involved with their community. They want it to thrive. They want it to survive. In our conversations at Mount Bristow Farm with Margaret Edgell, the proprietor, and Pippa Hackett, her fellow organic farmer nearby. It's like, how do we preserve a great way to farm? How do we preserve rural Ireland? What are the things we can do to preserve this way of life? And then we talked to the historian Brian Kennedy at Burr Castle, and he kind of almost seduces us to visit the rest of the town because he made it sound so compelling. And then we end up in Banagher by the River Shannon, and we talked to the historian James Cully there. And we talked with my friends Mark and Dave Boylan, and they're all involved with the community, and they're all cheering the place on. And to go back to the Time restaurant, the chef there, he's cheering for his suppliers, his community of organic farmers and butchers and fishmongers. That's his reason for being, to keep that community alive so they can survive, they can thrive, and keep that kind of community alive too.
Yeah, and this is a drum that I've been beating outside of my podcast persona, is the importance of meeting in the round. The best things in life are things that are generally done communally, that there is a yearning now after COVID, after years of people sitting behind their screens, and as people's feeds fill up with AI slop, beginning to realize that actually the IRL, not Ireland, but in real life, is becoming more and more important. And I'm just thinking of Margaret Malloy, who also happens to be from the Hidden Heartlands, and awfully talking about how there's going to be an increasing realization that real-time experiences in the round are going to be more and more important in a time of uncertainty where we're getting flooded with problematic information, let's say. And I'm not going to go any further to it than that. Yeah. But here's the thing. What makes you happy is actually meeting people in the round and connecting with people and seeing how you can help each other.
That leads into another experience we had for the first time this year, meeting in the round with our listeners to a certain extent, when we had our live podcast shows as part of the Origin Theater Festival, where people actually paid their hard-earned dollars to come in and see us do 2 podcasts on Irish theater with people from Northern Irish Theater, Alicia McGee and Chrissy O'Donovan. That was the first episode. John Nutty and Kieran Byrne, the second half of the performance. And I'm going to give them the nod for the most raw and riveting conversation moments that we had looking back over the past years when those 2 gentlemen, John and Kieran, were discussing their experience of the troubles of Northern Ireland. We had a great time performing for a live audience. For the first time, we hear people laughing at some of the things that come up. But there was also that lack of sound when people were really concentrating and really zoning in. And that was particularly when these 2 guys were talking about their experiences during the troubles. They've moved from them, but haven't entirely left them behind.
I also think what's important there is one of the other ideas that was emerging in the course of that podcast was the importance of actually engaging in performance. I think a lot of times we've been conditioned to be passive consumers. And the point being made in a lot of that discussion was, you too can actually get out there and perform and get out and engage and get out from behind your screen. Gone there again. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. And I'd say the other big takeaway from that is we want to do more of that going forward. So we're definitely looking at doing at least a couple more episodes that are going to be live. And as a matter of fact, I've actually been vetting out places.
While we're at it, let's thank Mick Melanthi, who was the artistic director of the Origin Theater for several years. Mick is going to be back on stage more, so he's concentrating on auditions. I know he's in a show right now down in Florida that I hope we'll see in New York. But let's thank Mick for including podcasting and looking at us to do so.
So I'm just going to spin the dial back because we did talk about our Lost in Belfast series, and we're fortunate that when we got back from that trip, I was talking to a good friend and frequent guest of the podcast, Ted Smith, And Ted suggested that we get in touch with Joe Kennedy III, who was the special envoy to Northern Ireland. Fortunately, we were able to make that connect and got to spend an interesting session with Joe. But I'm curious as to what your impressions were of that.
Oh, yeah. I was hugely impressed with him. I was very happy to get the time with him and his initiatives. He's not in political office at the moment, and he's found a couple of great ways to move the ball forward in a more just and equitable world. His initiative in some of the southern states that the Democrats have largely ignored and abandoned, he said, no, we should fight there. And it's not overtly a political initiative, but we need to keep advancing these issues even where we're not close to winning an election. Let's move the ball forward for people on the local level, local communities.
Yeah, really impressed with Joe's work in a number of what is generally called red state America. As I recall, West Virginia and Mississippi and Arkansas were part of that beat. And it's done under the auspices of the Groundwork Project. And I guess what's more important about that conversation and what I took away from Joe was the importance of civility. And let's be clear, we've been living through a rather divisive time in America, and it was a breath of fresh air to talk to somebody that was not trying to drive wedges between people, but actually pull people together.
And I heard from people in Belfast that he was enormously impactful special envoy. He's kept in touch. He loves to go there. We're keeping our eyes on JK3. So let's just probe the memory banks here from the last year. We'll do a few questions. What took you by surprise in the Hidden Heartlands?
What took me by surprise was actually the density of things to do. I mean, when you step into a car in Ireland, a lot of times you're traveling the road and you will see signs for places that somewhere in the deep recesses of your brain, and you're like, oh darn, I wish I could go see that, right? Now, that said, we went to see amazing things when we were there. I'd say a peak experience, that whole thing had to be going to Clonmacnoise. I'm a Dubliner, and so I've been to Glendalough frequently, which is a day trip out of Dublin, but I'd never been to Clonmacnoise. I'd heard of it, but I'd never been there, and it was extraordinary.
And we came out of the rain and the sun was shining, and we had the place to ourselves.
It was gorgeous. It was just a spectacular spot, and quiet and calm and empty, and there's something to be said about traveling in Ireland in October.
What was the name of that castle we stumbled upon? It was really serendipity. It's usually closed. We arrived just at the right time. They held the doors open for us and they let us in for a tour.
Yeah, that was the Charleville Estate, which is an eye-popping interior. And of course, it's made its way onto Netflix for the Wednesday series. For those of you that are Addams Family fans, you will find Wednesday is actually being filmed in deepest Offaly in the hidden heartlands of Ireland, and it is a phenomenal place to go visit and has to have one of the great trees that I have ever seen. Yeah.
And it's haunted, by the way. There's a really eerie ghost story that the guide will tell you about. It's not open all the time, so you have to find out more. We just got lucky. We got completely lucky. As far as something that took me by surprise, and as mentioned on the episode, I had visited this place 112 years ago when I first visited Offaly trying to seek out my relatives, and they took me to Birr Castle. The depth of the science that happened at Birr Castle, the amazing Leviathan telescope, this steampunk contraption out on the lawn of this castle that made important astronomical history and was the biggest telescope in the world for about 75 years. And that history of astronomy continues because about 5 years ago, they discovered a dwarf star that had never been seen before because it's part of this Europe-wide radio telescope satellite network. And so the science is still going on.
That's what's interesting about the Earls of Ross, who are still in residence.
Still living, wouldn't let us in.
They are the Parsons family, although you can actually visit the castle during the summer. So here's a case where you don't want to be on the shoulder season. But what's extraordinary about that family is their willingness to learn new stuff, to experiment, to put it all out there. These guys had bucket loads of money, but they were still into doing amazing research. And it's just a reminder is you do not have to be defined by idleness. You can actually take that privilege and do extraordinary work.
They had one of the earliest electrical generation plants in Ireland. One of the women in the family was a pioneer photographer. They had the guy who rigged up some equipment to discover the temperature of the moon. I'm not sure why that was such a hot topic. And one of the very, very earliest examples of a suspension bridge.
Yeah, and of course the gardens there were extraordinary. And we actually visited that day when the residue of Hurricane Umberto was blowing through, and we still had just about good enough to really get a sense of how extraordinary the gardens are there.
Something's blooming there every day of the year. We did see a lot of things still in blossom at that time of year.
Yeah, just magnificent stuff.
On the topic of science at Birr Castle, there's a fantastic science museum that chronicles all these developments. You'd be very surprised to find out these scientific advances that happen in Ireland. So I recommend stopping by Birr Castle for 100 reasons, but also see the Science Museum. That's really neat. A lot of interactive stuff.
And a really cool town. So one of the other things, of course, that we're trying to do in our off-the-beaten craic road trip, and we do plan actually on doing more road trips, is taking listeners on the road and while we are recording, but not necessarily releasing right away. There's an opportunity to do videos, there's an opportunity to do photographs, and there's an opportunity to engage.
Yeah, there's things we can do beyond the actual podcast. We started in Belfast. We picked up the pace in the Hidden Heartland strip, putting out little summaries of what we did that day on social media. A couple of times you and I got in front of the camera. We talked about things coming up, things we had just done. So we hope while you're listening, you also follow us on social. You'll see a lot of the places we'll saw. Martin's been putting out a great newsletter. We've included more photography on our show notes. And while I'm talking about show notes, you will now find just about every episode we do on irishcentral.com. They're running articles about our episodes. You can actually listen to the episode right on irishcentral.com.
So looking forward, we have one more episode this year and then 2026.
We still have a lot of work to do from the Hidden Heartlands, including a nice stop off in Leitrim. That's the one time we moved out of Athlone to stay in a hotel. And then we went to Monaghan for the Peace Campus in Monaghan, where we saw the Project Children 50th anniversary celebration. We'll tell you all about this amazing effort to bring Protestant kids and Catholic kids out of the troubles into families in the Northeast, give them a normal summer together. They were celebrating their 50th anniversary, and we were lucky enough to be there. And all the archives are going into the impressive Monaghan Peace Campus. We mentioned the Solus Nua. We're going to be going back there for a residency at their next Capital Irish Film Festival down in Silver Spring, Maryland. We're taking our first trip to Philadelphia to their annual Big Irish event, the Ambassadors Award, held by Philadelphia's Irish American Business Network.
So one other thing before we wrap this up, we're always interested in your feedback. And I mentioned earlier, we're looking forward to doing a couple of podcast recordings in front of a live audience. But another alternative is actually to take a deep dive on a subject where we maybe do 3 and 4 episodes on a particular theme.
We've done that a couple of times with the drinks industry, the spirits business. We explored several different aspects of it.
So what we want to do is hear from you. What would you like to hear as a set of themed episodes? So don't be shy, reach out. We have on our website, irishstewpodcast.com. There's a contact form there. Feel free to put in your suggestions. It will be read and we will give it due consideration.
Let's look at a couple of ideas. One would be Irish music, and along with our off-the-beaten craic idea, maybe Irish music beyond trad music. We love trad music. I was at a trad music concert last night. But what other kinds of music are going on in Ireland and in the Irish diaspora communities? So
And of course, in my case, if you know a little bit about me, I'm a lover of green things. And so an opportunity maybe to do a series about trees. So maybe you want to go hug a tree, learn a bit more about forestry in Ireland and some amazing initiatives to turn Ireland not just to be a country of fields, but also ancient Celtic forest restoration.
And we've never really done anything on the visual arts, painting, stained glass, etchings, sculpture, tapestry, textiles. So maybe we can do something along those lines. And maybe you know somebody we should talk to about that.
So feel free to reach out, visit irishstewpodcast.com, look for the contact form, and give us your suggestions.
And we want to thank everybody who takes the time to listen to our humble offering here at Irish Stew. We gave a thanks to Irish Central. Tourism Ireland has been amazing, helping us put the show on the road. We thank them so much for their support of our last 2 trips and hopefully our next.
And so, as we conclude, this is the 38th episode of the year.
Yeah, okay.
There will be one more, which will feature our good friend Ted Smith, where we will talk all things political. Ireland and England, political Northern Ireland, the political Ireland and Maritime. So, if you're into politics, this is a great show to conclude the year.
That's the yearly wrap-up. It's the holiday season. We hope everybody, in whichever way they can, has a great, relaxing, happy time. We hope to see you again after the Ted Smith episode. We'll be back with you in January. Plenty more to come. Thanks for being with us.
Irish Stew is produced by John Lee, Martin Nutty, and Bill Schultz. Editing, mixing, and mastering by Bill Schultz. Music on Irish Stew was composed and performed by Rosa Nutty, with Donald Bowens on drums, Cathal O'Riordan on bass and synthesizer. For more on Rosa Nutty's music, please visit rosanutty.com.